Good afternoon. Just going to wait for a minute or two as the room populates. But as normal, when you enter, if you can go ahead and mute your microphone. Mariam, what is that picture? Mariam, what is it? I can see it. What is it, though?
Food from not Orlando. Food from New Orleans.
Gotcha.
You tripping, Mariam.
Let me see. So now that we're getting into where we're going to be coding every day, so I encourage you, when you log in, or really prior to logging in and clicking the meeting, we should all really have Thani open. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but definitely you want to go ahead and open up your Thani and share screen. Here we go. See, my Thani has a program on it. So we're gonna get to something like this later on, a nested menu program. So file, recent files, and I want to get to bootcamp, module 2 notes. So I want to get back to, so again, prior to even clicking on the meeting link, you want to have your Thani open and you want to be ready to go. Also, what I recognize is we have some attendees, participants who are in their senior year of high school, probably very fast typers, and at the low end or younger end, as I told you all on the first day that this started, pardon me, I muted, that this started when I had the intention of teaching my 12-year-old daughter here, because I taught my son programming when he was 11 or 12. Actually, he was 11. And so she is one of the slowest typers in the room, probably. And that's not a bad thing. It's just because we all learn how, to type, as an example, slowly over time, unless you take a class. So I say this with that understanding that there are various levels of being able to keep up with me, the instructor here, as I type, but I can't slow down when I type just because of, wanting to make sure you can catch up. But there's a good thing that these sessions are recorded, right? And so what I'm going to have my daughter do, and what I would encourage everyone in here to do, is that after the session is finished, within like 2 or 3 hours, the recording is going to be available on YouTube. But it takes probably about an hour for YouTube to actually get the HD version ready, which is kind of required in order to read all this text. I would encourage those who are really serious and wanting to learn to then go back, not listen to everything again. So right now, listen to fully pay attention, to fully give it 100% attention, and try to keep up with the typing. But if you ever find that you cannot keep up with the typing, just try, make sure you listen, make sure you understand, make sure you ask questions when necessary. But if you can't keep up with the typing, what you then need to do is go back afterwards to make sure that your module 2 notes, because we're currently at module 2, that your module 2 notes are identical to mine, which you'll find in the video. Okay, because I'm screen sharing, so you can see my module 2 notes. And so, Mariam, I'm telling you this right now, and I'll tell you in 2 hours that I'm going to say go back upstairs, and your assignment's going to be to go back over the video, not to watch everything, but to go make sure that every single thing that I type is in your notes. Cool, Mariam? Give me something. I can see you, but sometimes I can't see you, so you'll have to unmute your mic next time and give me the answer. Love you. So, here we go. I want to cover some things that I don't think were maybe the clearest last time. If I were to, because what I was explaining is that there's a couple different philosophies when you're teaching programming. The old school philosophy is, let's teach every single little detail perfectly as we go. So if I want to teach you A, B, C, D, E, F, G, when I'm going to teach you A perfectly, and then B perfectly, and then C perfectly, before we even go on to the next things, before we go on to E. And in doing so, it's boring. It's really boring, because to teach every detail of every little thing that you learn perfectly before moving to the next, it's going to wear you out and be bored. You're going to be so bored before you even solve problems. The other philosophy, which is what most publishers and educators do these days, is we kind of teach by doing, and it's not going to all make perfect sense. But then after we teach by doing, and we kind of understand at a 70 percentile level, then we back up and we try to go over those finer details. Okay, and so that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm backing up a little bit right now. So last time, what did we cover as well? Let me open up. I think we did this area of a circle, and we did miles to kilometers. So last time I used, a variable. I talked about an assignment operator, but very briefly, I'm going to talk about that more today. I did not talk about the details of variables and what all can be included as variables. That's going to come more detail today and again on Thursday. So I just wanted to cover, we did this. So here's an example of where we solved a problem, but I didn't get into the details of really what does this mean? What's really going on here? What's here? And so now we're going to back up a little bit to cover some of that. So, pardon me. If I say A, and again, anytime I'm typing, you should type. And anytime I'm putting comments, try to put those comments as well, okay? So if I were to say A equals 12, and then B equals 12, but this time I put that 12 in quotations. And here I'm gonna put a comment. What is the difference between A and B above? The answer, A is viewed by Python as a number, as storing a number. B is viewed by Python as basic text. In fact, here's a new term for you. B is a string of text. What is a string of text? I'll put this whole thing. Now, what is a string of text? Anything in quotations is considered a string of text, which is one or more, which is made up of one. If we can mute the mics when we come in, please. One or more characters. I'll just hit mute all. That's a lot of typing, so if you type slow, you're not going to fully follow that, and you're going to have to catch up with that afterwards, okay? So we have two variables here. A is a variable, B is a variable. A is 12, and then B is also 12. But the difference is A here is viewed as a number by Python. We can perform mathematical operations on that number, okay? And you know what? I'm going to even get back to this discussion. And in 60 seconds, I want to cover something else even above that I forgot. I'm going to be jumping around today. So if I were to just say above, variables and their values. So if I were to say x, not x, how about w equals 10, and I print w, and then I were to also say w equals 8, and then I print w again. I think you all understand that since w is a variable, kind of like in mathematics. What are we doing here? I wasn't reading. Please enter your name. Fine. Please enter an integer. This is all from last time. So since w is a variable, here I'm highlighting the output w. I can print it. I can do something with it. I printed 10, for example, and then I changed the w to 8 because it's a variable. A variable can be changed. So I changed it to 8 and I print it again. Or how about I would have print w plus 4. So that would print 10 plus 4, which will be 14. Then I change w to 8, and maybe I then print w plus 7. So it'll be 8 plus 7, and that'll be 15, right? So I need to fill this in again, an integer. Okay, so we get 14 and 15. The point is, just make sure we understand that these variables here, we can give them different values. And since they're a variable, we can change it, and we can then do stuff with it. So coming back to here, a comment is numbers versus strings stored in variables. So here this A equals 12 versus B equals 12 in quotations, that this is a number. Python, you can now perform mathematical operations on it. I can say down below, I could say C equals A divided by 2. That's a very easy question that I'm about to ask you. Given what A is above, someone unmute your mic and tell me what is the answer for C right now. C is A divided by 2. What's the answer for C? I don't hear you, Imran. Someone
6.
else? 6. The answer is absolutely 6. So if we wanted to print, and I'm going to talk about how we print more later, but C is, and then I print, I put a comma and I put the actual variable, okay? And we did this last time with miles to kilometers, like when we calculated the kilometers and I said print the results. Here I printed 2 things within this print statement. This is a print function and we printed 2 things. How do you see 2 things? Like a person who's experienced with Python programming, how do we see that there's 2 things inside these parentheses? Well, you look for the comma. How many commas do I have? I have 1 comma, and that means that 1 comma is separating 2 things. What is this one thing right here? It's a string of text because any quotations will have between them a string of 1 or more characters. And in fact, there are 4 characters inside this string of text: a K, an M, a colon, and a space. That's a character that's inside that string of text. And the other, so here we're just printing a string of text, and here we're printing km, which is a variable which is storing this result that we calculated above. So coming back, and again, I'm jumping around here because there's a lot to accomplish. Coming back here to the notes, I calculated C is A divided by 2, and then I print C. So when I run this, it says C is 6.0, and Imran is correct. So now if I were to say D equals B divided by 2, and then I want to print D is D. What do we suspect we're going to have here? What does someone think, if you want to unmute and tell me?
I mean, we're gonna have a string of text, so we're gonna have to have like evaluate like some.
Well, so basically what's going to happen is, good answer, since we know that B is a string of text, can we divide a string of text by 2? The answer is no. So a lot of students, I remember, especially in college, it's funny. It's in a way, it's easier at times to teach Python to middle school students, believe it or not, like students in 6th and 7th grade, because they remember the names of a lot of these things. Like if I were to say C equals A divided by 2, what is this called? What are these called? You know, this is an operator. These are their operands. It's funny, college students, if you ask them what's an operand, a lot of times they don't know because that's a term from like 2nd grade. But here, this is the division operator, the operator, and these are the operands, right? Well, obviously for division to work, both of the operands should be numbers. In this case, one of our operands is a string of text. You can't divide a string of text by a number. And in fact, when I run this code, let me get to that point, it gives an error. Now, when you're new, these errors will feel cryptic. They're going to feel like it's very foreign in another language. But let's try to look at it. It says here on line 59, so if I actually click where my mouse is moving, I click where it says line 59, notice it even brings me to that in my code, right? So I'm going to click it again. It highlights it for me, and it says, hey, there's an error there. And it says unsupported operand types for division. It says that, hey, we see this division operator, but the operands you're using doesn't make sense. We see a string and we also see int. And you could probably guess what that stands for: integer, like a whole number. It says you're trying to divide a string by an int. That won't work, okay? So just a little comment here. The 2 lines below are commented because they would cause an error. Why? Answer, and this is how I normally put my comments here in these modules. Answer, because B is a string, and we cannot divide a string by a number. So I'm going to go ahead and comment these 2 lines, and then let's pull up the module slide. So I wanted to cover that. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about eval. We did this, I think, even last time, very briefly. So let's talk about eval. Python has a command. So eval stands for evaluate. Evaluate. Python has a function called eval. This eval function tries to evaluate whatever is inside the parentheses. Am I spelling this right? Parentheses. I'm not sure if I'm spelling that right. Oh no, I think it's AN, right? It's horrible. No, that doesn't look right. Is that right? Where's my spell checker? It's embarrassing. Yeah, I thought it was EN. Okay, good. So Python tries to evaluate whatever's inside the parentheses. So let's check this out. Print. If I want to print, how about, let's see, eval. I'll just make some new variables. How about this? Eval E equals eval of 12 plus 5. Okay, and then print E is E. I see people are typing in the chat. I don't see any hands up yet. Okay, so here E is E. We're just printing the value. So what Python's going to do is it's going to try to evaluate this, okay, mathematically. It sees that it's a string, but it's going to look inside the string. It's going to recognize, hey, there's a plus sign. There's 2 numbers on both sides of the plus sign. And it's going to assume that you're intending to add that together. So in fact, we're going to get 17 for E, okay? And you can evaluate other things as well. Mind you, you don't need to actually use evaluate. Evaluate is used, so for example, if I were just to say F equals, I could have just said 12 plus 5, right? And then I can print F is F, right? That'll print the exact same thing, and that'll print 17. Okay, so why would we even use evaluate? The answer is there's many times you would use evaluate, and in fact, there's better things to use than evaluate. I want to make that very clear. Python programmers would say evaluate is not good because it takes control away from the programmer, and I recognize that, and we'll talk about later better things than evaluate. But for now, it's a great newbie function to use at the beginning. So when is evaluate used? It's whenever you have a string of text that you want to view as a number. Now, why would you have a string of text that you want to view as a number? And this is going to happen all of the time when we begin to, starting today, read from the user. Can someone give me a show of hands? If y'all can just raise your hands. Did we talk about last time reading from the user? I know the answer. I want to see what you remember. Did we read anything from the user at all? Like where we asked user input, and keep your hands up in the chat. The answer is yes. What did we read from the user? It's on my notes. I can scroll above. Someone unmute and tell me, what did we read from the user? Unmute.
Didn't we do, like, please enter your name?
That's exactly what we did, okay? And so how did we read from the user, if I come up here, is we used this input function. This was the comment from last time, reading input from users. We do this using the input function. Anytime, I'm gonna come back to new comment, input, I'll put this on caps, input function revisited, okay? Anytime we want to read something from the user, we must use the input function. Well, guess what? I'm going to type that. Well, guess what? the input function always reads the user input as strings of text. So even if we ask the user, what's your age? And they enter 17. Well, so for example, if we were to say age equals input, what is your age? Okay, colon space like this. If I did that and the user entered their age, what is going to be stored inside this variable age will be a string that contains some digits, assuming they entered 17 for 17. It will be a string. It will not be a number. So I want to state that again. It's very important. Anytime we read something from the user, we use the input function, but the caveat and the catch is that this input function, it reads things as strings of text. It's not understood by Python as a number. So for example, if I were to, let's just do it like this. Please enter your age, okay? And then I want to print how about you entered 12, or you entered this. That's good enough. I'll say you entered this many age. Print next year, comma, you will be, and I want to put their age next year. So for example, you might be thinking, what if I tried to do that, just hypothetically? So if I were to say, enter your age, what is your age? If they put 17, okay? So they're gonna scan, they're gonna enter 17. What is your age? And then I'm gonna print, you entered, and I print their age, which they entered as 17. I have not hit the enter button yet because I didn't want the program to break just yet. So it will print, you entered 17. It'll print that right here. And then on the next line, when I say, hey, next year, your age will be, when we try to do age plus 1, we're going to get unexpected output. And my intention was not to talk about what this can mean just yet, but it's actually going to print 171, which is going to be really confusing to you. Oh, sorry, I restarted this. What is your age? 17. Actually, wait, what does it say? Because it's what it concatenate string. Next year you can only concatenate string, not int. Oh, got you. Yeah, I would have to make this as a string. But point is, it's confusing. It's confused because it's trying to perform some type of operation here. Either it's trying to perform the addition operation, which is all you should probably know at the moment, or it's trying to actually do a concatenation operation, which I haven't taught you. So the takeaway, the takeaway here is what? I'm going to erase this line. The takeaway here is that when you scan from the user, which we're going to start doing constantly from now, is it scans as text. So if you want to view what has been scanned as other than text, you need to use eval, okay? And eval will evaluate that scanned input, and it will recognize, hey, the user put a number, so let's understand that as now a number, which we can perform mathematical operations on it. So let's come back to our bootcamp, click on the Module 2 PDF to see where we're at. Imran, do you have a question at the moment? Your hand is up. And there were two, Imran and Ayub, your hands were up, but Ayub put his down. Yeah, I figured you were just answering from earlier, Imran. So let me see. We covered this, we covered that. So data type, we did all of this. We did the trace through. Cool. Bear with me. We did kilometers, and here we are. So this is what I just covered with eval on slide, what number is this? 17. So eval, if I put in quotations 34.5, so that's a string of text with 4 characters, a 3, a 4, a period, and a 5. But when we use eval, Python's now going to understand that as a real number, 34.5, okay, as a real number. If I said eval of 345, Python now understands that as 345, the number. Same thing, I can eval this, Python will actually evaluate that, and I can eval this, and Python will evaluate all of that. But again, that's normally only used if you for some reason have it as a string. So what I'd like to do is come back to, let's revisit a program we did last time, which is this area of a circle. Can y'all confirm for me? I want to make sure that all of you, can you show your hands if you have this exact code, area of a circle 2 from last time? Okay, thank you. That's good enough, because I don't want to redo this completely as a result, but I'm going to pull up my original area of a circle. Y'all can put your hands down. Here's the original area of a circle that we had. And if you remember, we did it twice just to show you that those are variables that you can, in fact, change. Okay, so we set the radius, we computed the area, and then we printed. And then we did a second area of a circle, which will now make sense to you, because here on, I wanted to come back to this program to revisit it to now make more sense of this eval statement. Because on the first area of a circle program, we just set the radius to 10. But now we're going to use the input function. Let's get rid of this eval here. We use the input function and we say, please enter a value for radius. So it's going to pause and it's going to allow the user. Let me go ahead and clear this so you're not wondering why there's red. Clear. And it says enter a value for radius. If the user enters 10, when I hit enter, I'm going to get an error, because right now we're scanning from the user and it's going to become basic text. And I cannot multiply that basic text times itself and then times 3.14. Because what's happening here, it's really 10 as text times another 10 as text. I mean, even though you and I see 1 and 0 in there, it may as well be A or B or WT. It makes no sense to Python why you would be multiplying a string of text times a string of text. So what we do is we put, so all of this right here results in, if the user enters 10, all of that I highlighted results in this. A string with the characters 1 and 0 inside. And then when I put eval on both sides of that, as you now know, that becomes a number 10, which gets saved into radius. So I'm going to come back to where we were. So here's this input command. When I now type in eval, and then I put an open parentheses, and then on the other side of this command over here, I put the close parentheses. All of this results in a string 10, which is evaluated as a number. So I'd like, pardon me, I would like to debug this, which I showed you previously. And you can follow along and see, this is where Thani is a great teaching IDE. So I hit the debug button. So debug runs one line of code at a time. It interprets one at a time. And then I'm going to click F7. Or you can click this button up here at the top where it says step into. So radius equals, it looks to the right side of that assignment statement, which we're going to cover today. And it then looks in eval. It now sees input. It looks inside the input function and it sees this line of code or this line of text, this string of text. And it says, please enter a radius. And it's waiting for us to put a radius. So I put 10 and then I hit enter. Well, when I put 10, I want you to look over at the right side of my screen. It's going to save that ultimately into radius. But first, what does it say? Notice what it did. It recognized 10 as a string of text. Now it's saying, hey, eval that 10. And when it evaluates the string of text 10, it became the number 10, which it then saves into radius, which is why we have on the right side of the screen now under the variables, we see where it says radius has the value of 10. Now we compute our area. 3.14 times radius. So 3.14 times 10, which is going to be 31.4 times 10, which is going to give you this number, 314. Okay, and then if we keep on going, ultimately we're going to print area is 314 and we get our result. So that is revisiting this one. I want to get to a problem for y'all. Here we go. So we have 10 minutes, and then we have less than 10 minutes. The pop-up just told me there's 10 minutes for the rest of this session. And of course, we'll start another session. For the for the remainder of these 10 minutes, I'm going to split you into groups to the breakout rooms. And I would like for, again, one person per breakout room to share their screen and then solve a given problem. The problem is what I'm showing you right now on the screen, which I'm going to first explain. So don't start coding this right now. And again, this is not the time to flex. I'm not looking for someone to, I have to say this because we have a lot of young students. A lot of people want to show off and, you know, go in the room and, hey, I did this in 30 seconds. Look at me. It's not the time to flex. If you want to flex, flex by going into the breakout room and flex your ability to explain to everyone else in the room how to actually solve the problem. So I want one person I want one person per room, pardon the cough, please, to share their screen and solve this within Thani, and everyone else in each of the rooms should unmute your mic. I want all mics unmuted because there's only going to be 4 or 5 people per room. And then I want you giving input. Hey, we need to do this here, do that there. And I want your code to look just like this code. So notice there's really 3 things. We need to get input from the user. We then need to compute something, and then we need to print the results. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a new program called, let's talk about the problem. The problem is compute average. So you're going to make a new program in Thani called compute average. You're going to make 3 comments. The first comment is get the values from user. The next comment is compute the average. The next comment is print the results. And then you're going to go through and do that together as a group. And we have 7.5 minutes left. So this is to compute the average of 3 numbers. I think everyone here knows how to compute an average of 3 numbers on a piece of paper. If I said A is 2, B is 27, C is 37, and I said get the average and save it into a 4th value or variable D, I think everyone could do that. So we need to use the input and eval functions to get our average. We need to use those to get the first number, the second number, the third number. So we're going to ask the user, please enter the first number. And we're going to use the input and eval, and we're going to get that number, and we're going to save it into a variable, maybe called num1. Then we say num2 equals, and we're going to please enter the second number, and then do the same for the third number. And I'm doing this quickly because I'm because of time, but also I want y'all to think about it. And 6 minutes may not be enough time. We'll see. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? As I see the time draining away, I'd rather not speed up. I'd rather make sure we accomplish this successfully. So I'm going to finish talking about it, and then before we code it, I'm going to stop this session and make a new session. So let's talk about this a little bit more. So we're going to use input and eval. Again, you're going to, on 3 different lines of code, ask the user, please enter an integer number. And you're going to save that into the variable num1. Please enter another integer number, the second number, save that into num2. Please enter a third number, save that into num3. And what I'm going to do actually with this 6 minutes left that I see is I want to talk about assignment in a little bit more detail than I've done previously. And I don't think we have, if I come to the top, yeah, see, last time I talked about assignment, I just want to revisit that. So assignment operator, remember, this right here that I'm highlighting is not equals. It is not called equals anymore. It's called assignment. How does assignment work? How do I get this none to go away? Hit stop. How does assignment work? When I look at this line of code right here, I see a 97 on the right side of this assignment operator. Remember, it's not called equals. If I ever ask you what's that called, you should say assignment. What does assignment do? Whenever I, as a programmer, see this assignment operator, my eyes immediately look to the right side. So I say, what's over here? And you have to maybe evaluate that because here it's just a 97, so there's nothing to evaluate. But maybe there's something to process or to evaluate. and you evaluate it. And then after you evaluate it, you save that thing into this variable, in this case into X. So similarly, on this area of a circle problem, look here on line 2. What do I see? An assignment operator. Well, what do I do when I see an assignment operator? I look which way, left or right? Someone tell me quickly, unmute. Look left or right?
Right.
So I look right. I look to the right side of that assignment operator, and I see all of this. So I need to evaluate that first. And I have this, please enter a value for the radius in the input, and then that gets evaluated. And then I take that final number and I assign it into radius. So make sure that the variables that you're saving the stuff into, that goes on the left side. Because a common mistake also of new programmers is if I wanted you to get a number from a user and they were to say num equals, you should say num equals eval input, please enter a number, okay? Many users, many newbies I'll see will do something like this. They'll say, okay, well, something like that. They'll say, well, yeah, here's our eval and our input, and we're saving it to num. That doesn't make sense, because when you see an assignment, you should look to the right and try to save whatever's in the right on the left. And so therefore, this is just illogical. So you would have instead num equals this. So you take what's on the right and you save it to what's on the left. So getting back to the problem at hand is compute the average of 3 numbers. So there's 3 basic steps of our recipe. Step 1 is get 3 numbers from the user. Step 2 is compute the average of those numbers, and I've already given you the equation here. Okay, and then step 3 is display the result. And I was explaining the following to my daughter earlier, which I'd like to explain to all of you. When I give you all a problem to work on, whether that be individually or in groups, and if it's a problem from the slides, the following should be obvious. I'm being Captain Obvious here, but it's worth stating. Clearly, the answer to this problem is found by simply scrolling down. So have mercy on yourself and don't scroll down, because if you scroll down and you look at the answer prior to trying to solve it yourself, you're not helping yourself at all. So I know it's going to be hard. You're like, oh, I can go like kind of look at the answer and cheat a little. No, there's no value. There's no value of doing that. So try to stay at this screen, try to solve it within your groups when we come back. And then after you solve it, then you can look at the answer if you like and see how it matches up. I'm going to go ahead and stop this session, take like a minute break, and then I'm going to come back, start the new session. But don't go away, because I'm going to immediately, once we start the new session, I'm going to go ahead and break y'all into your groups so you can try to solve this problem. Cool? So give me just a moment, please.